Good afternoon. I call the Moore County Board of...
Oh, gosh. It's talking to you.
Technology at its best, Ms. Carter. Good afternoon. Welcome to the Moore County Board of Education work session for today, Monday, October 29th. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Dr. Brown, Pledge of Allegiance. Now for a moment of silence. All right, we have a long work session agenda here. Dr. Grimacy, I'll turn it over to you for the first item.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There are many items on this agenda, but many are of routine board business nature. We do have some that are of significant public interest, and then some that are just important, whether there's a lot of interest in them or not. But I do think that the staff has worked hard, and we're prepared to enable the board to do its work very efficiently. So I'm allowing our panel to gather. Today, Madam Chair, the staff and our consultants, after they get themselves settled, will be presenting what we refer to as the superintendent's recommended student assignment plan for the new elementary school on Camp Easter Road. I want to compliment everyone who's participated in bringing us to this point. That would include our consultants, Mike Miller and Laura Evans and John Barath and Tim Locklear, but there also have been many others who have participated at community forums and on our advisory committee. There is still room for tweaking of the plan that's presented today, so although I call it the superintendent's recommended plan, it's one that I put before you today, and if there's any final input you'd like to have, we'll take that. I want to emphasize the fact that this plan is being presented to you for consideration as you prepare to offer it for public comment. So your vote at the regular board meeting next week will be merely to validate the plan for the purposes of putting it out to the public and then having the public comment on that. So we're still a month away from final approval of the student assignment plan. I also would like to just acknowledge, because I will formally introduce her next week, the new principal of the new elementary school is sitting in the back. She's already gathering information. Dr. Molly Capps is with us tonight, but I don't want you to shake hands and congratulate her yet, because you're going to do that next Monday.
Sorry.
But we are grateful that this is an example of the homework that Molly's doing to prepare. And at this time, she's sort of serving in two capacities. She's continuing her excellent work as leader at Aberdeen Primary School and then building her capacity as leader for this new school. Molly, welcome. So with that, Mr. Brath, are you prepared?
I am ready, sir.
All right. I'll turn it over to you for our presentation.
Thank you. Of which I'm going to turn it over to Laura Evans.
I knew that was coming. I just leaned over and I said, "Are you going to have any words to say?" And he said, "No." I said, "Okay." Well, Madam Chair, Superintendent, and members of the board, it's good to be back with you again today. So we are bringing to you, we've called it in the presentation Draft 3, but it's the final staff draft. Ultimately becomes the superintendent's recommendation at some point in the very near future. So we will give you some background information, as we always have done. As we present, we'll talk about our previous discussions. We'll review the guiding principles. That's what we've used as the driver behind all of this. We'll talk about the feedback we received at the public forum and the advisory committee, and from the online information that we've got. We'll present to you then this third draft, okay, and talk about what changes there were. We'll talk about phase two, the larger picture, and then we always include an addendum or an appendix, of more detailed information. And I do want to say that in the appendix, we've included a synopsis of the first public forum we had and the second public forum we had, the feedback that we received. It's in the addendum, okay? All righty, so we're here today on October 29th, and just since we last met with you on October 1st, we had a public engagement meeting on October 3rd at Vast Lakeview Elementary School. It was well attended. We had an advisory meeting on October the 15th, which I just have been so pleased with the people on the advisory committee, both the Moore County staff representation and the parents, and then, we always have board members there, and it's just a good, helpful conversations. Excellent feedback, and the same was true at the public, if you were able to attend at the public forum. And so we're here today now with a third revision for the assignment area for the school on Camp Easter Road. Once again, I'm committed to the guiding principles. They're excellent. They've been super helpful. You want to emphasize a balance as we develop the new attendance area. You want us to emphasize good planning and good data. You want us to emphasize efficiency, and that really boils down to utilization of buildings and bus routes and that kind of thing. And then involve the community. I think we're doing a good job in each of our drafts so that we're aligning with the guiding principles that you've provided us. And then remember in the top right-hand corner about those guiding principles, they could overlap, they can conflict with each other, they may not be fully implemented. And in this case, we'll see in a few minutes that some of the implementation is going to come in the second phase of the assignment plan. All right, the feedback we've received since our last draft. As I said, we've got a summary of the community forum feedback in the addendum. We're going to look at how we've been tracking the 1819 membership. And we've requested and received some updates from the municipality of Whispering Pines. And we've not received anything from Southern Pines Planning Department yet, but we want to talk about what updates we have received, because that was part of the public feedback, is to be mindful of growth that may not be included in the original data from back last January. Okay? Now I'll turn it over to Mike then to talk about the feedback.
Thank you, Laura. The table you see on slide 6 is the latest month 1 data collected directly from the district. So this is not DPI approved yet, but I don't know of significant changes between DPI approved and what you're going to see here. So this is measured on day 30. The second column is this year's membership compared to the first column, which is 2017 month 2. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy between the month of capture. 17-18 data is month 2 data. The 18-19 data is month 1 data. However, generally speaking, the trends are fairly stable between month 1 and month 2. For Cameron, we're seeing 4 more children this year than last, increase of 4. Increase of 5. Good thing I studied math. Carthage, increase of 7. Sandhills Farm Life, increase of 14. And for Vast Lakeview, actually a decrease of about 19 for this first month. So the purpose of this data is to kind of calibrate the forecast that we're using and seeing if everything is online. Vast Lakeview, we expected it to grow a little bit this year according to the forecast, so we're seeing a little decline there, and we'll take that into account as we look at some of these scenarios. As Laura mentioned, one of the topics of discussion on both of the community forum meetings was, make sure you're getting the most up-to-date data from the planning communities. Is it comprehensive? Is it current? And so that prompted us to go back to Whispering Pines and Southern Pines planning and request any changes since the data was compiled back in January of 2018. There's 2 requests out currently to Southern Pines planning. I have not received information yet, but Whispering Pines got right back with us. And as you can see here, the only change is a final plat approval for Phase 3 of Summerfield at Arrowstone subdivision, which adds an additional 33 lots. One of the things this table will help you understand is about the pacing of development. And those of you in the community forums will know that that's another question that pops up. We've got a lot of potential development, residential lots on the planning books, and how fast are they going to come out so that they are going to impact your schools. And you can get some kind of sense of that from this chart. Remember that the second column there was collected in January 18, and the number in parentheses is the number of units remaining out of the approved. So for Arrowstone, there are 4 units remaining, and when we updated that in the third column, there's still 4 units remaining. In Foxcroft, phases 1 through 3, you had 11 units remaining in January with only 5 units remaining when we got this data in October. So you can look at about 6 additional units over a 10-month period. 6 additional units over a 10-month period.
So just so I'm clear, that means 6 units have been built in a 10-month period?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's not a certificate of occupancy. They're built. Heronsbrook, the same, 6 additional units over 10 months. Newberry Ridge, 2 additional units over 10 months. And the big mover here is Summerfield with 21 additional, if I did my math right, over 10 months, 21 additional units. So you're looking at about 2 units per month. I've done this in a lot of districts throughout North Carolina, and what I see here is a pretty typical development rates, build-out rates for these kinds of developments.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
When the projection was done by ORAD, they had to estimate how many additional units would go on per year till they got to the
correct,
end.
yeah.
So how does this differ much from what they have projected?
I haven't double-checked that yet. I haven't had time to go back and they keep that data. All I had was the output. So in terms of numbers of students, it's a good question.
So they could already be built into the forecast of the number of students?
Yes,
Possible,
yeah,
okay.
yes. Summerfield? Okay.
Summerfield, where's that located?
I
I
can
don't
tell
know.
you.
Yeah,
I think it's right off of
It's off of Airport Road,
right.
right off of Airport Road when you're, it's kind of like the backside of Airport
Yeah.
when they fly out.
Oh.
It's like right on the bottom. Yes, thank you.
Harding Airport?
Hardy.
I knew it was on airport, didn't know when.
Is that in here somewhere?
So once again,
Mike, if I could,
Yes, sir.
I think with Mr. Dennison's question, which is a very good one, I think we assume that these units, these parcels were included in the ORAD data
That's
last
correct.
January, unless we hear otherwise. Because we paid a lot of money for that study, and we have noted
Yes.
often. But parcels are different than build-outs, and so we have had subdivisions that have 400 parcels, but they haven't inched off of 150 build-outs in 3, 4, 5 years. So that potential is there. This shows you the pace of build-out in these
Yes.
particular cases.
Like Pine Mound, it's not built out completely. It's
Correct.
been here for years.
So let's just assume, that study still stands unless we hear otherwise.
absolutely, yeah.
Mr. Dennison will let you know if there's a change.
Yeah, I just want the public to understand that this doesn't necessarily mean that we hadn't already anticipated this happening.
Oh, absolutely, yeah, all this is right inside the forecast that we're using, yes, sir. Yes, absolutely. And if there's no further questions on this, I'll turn it back over to Laura.
One more.
Yes, ma'am.
And of course, you said that you haven't had a response from Southern Pines yet.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, the Carolina area is Southern Pines,
Yes.
is that correct? So we're waiting to hear on that.
But we
What
don't
they
know the
finally-
build-out pace for that one at all,
And what,
because when
have
we
they done
did,
final approval even on the additional houses?
I don't recall if council's already decided on that, or if it, planning board just did. I'll have to look into that. But keep in mind, when ORA did the report for 2018 January, they met with all the builders to get all the data and everything building up to that, just like Mr. Dennison said. However, this was not in the plan at that time. And so the builder would have had a different response then, as they may moving forward, which is why every couple of years we want to
Right.
refresh and redo that study.
Well, are there any developments that were not, just the name of the development was not included in the ORAD study that anybody
I'm not
mentioned?
aware of any,
Okay,
no.
that's good to know.
Okay, so let's go to slide 8 then, and let's talk about what refinements we're bringing to you today for this final staff recommendation. We continue to keep our focus on why we're building this new school on Camp Easter Road. It's to relieve crowding at Sandhills Farm Life and Vass Lakeview. That was the purpose of building the school. All right, so the refinements are going to stay focused to that point. We're also focusing on stability of students. Being I'm from Wake County, I've already been whooped up upon because we didn't keep students stable. So I'm very focused on that. And we're also going to stay focused on any changes in data that might happen through this multi-year process. So here are the refinements we're bringing you today. At this point in time, we're not recommending any changes to the attendance area between Vass, Lakeview, and Cameron. It will stay the same for the 1920 school year. You're going to see in a minute that ultimately it might change, but for this first year, we're going to hold it constant, okay? The changes between Vass Lakeview and Sandhills Farm Life, there will be none. They will stay the same. The current attendance area stays the same, okay? And then finally, we did in draft 2 recommend the area around Rays Bridge Road, or the northern portion of Pine Ridge Road, to remain at Sandhills Farm Life. Or that we had recommended that it go to the new school, but at this point we're going to say, let's leave them stable for now and keep them at Sandhills Farm Life. Okay? Question?
I need a visual.
Yes, yeah, I do too.
This
I
is just
do
the
too.
introduction. Right?
So let's go, if you don't mind, let's go to slide 10 before we look at the data, so you have your visual. Slide 10. So remember, on the left is the current attendance areas, and on the right are the recommended changes. So between Carthage and Cameron, the green and the blue schools, that attendance area is as it is today in this recommendation. There is no change between Carthage and Cameron. Okay? Between Vass Lakeview and Sandhills Farm Life, that attendance area, there is no recommendation for change between what it is today. The only changes that are recommended are between Sandhills Farm Life and the new school, and Vass Lakeview and the new school. Getting back to our sole purpose, that the new school is to relieve crowding at those two existing schools. And then the one other thing I want to point out to you is that Rays Bridge Road area, that in draft 2, in draft 1, it was at Sandhills Farm Life, stayed at its current school. In draft 2, we recommended it to go to the new school. But here now, in the final staff recommendation, we're going to say, wait up, let's let that stay where it is for now, in the name of stability. And then in the next phase, we may revisit that, okay? So basically, the line between Sand Hills Farm Life and the new school is the same as it was in draft 1. Is that clear now?
Can we blow that up?
Yes.
Let's just, the one on the right would, that'll help the board members and the public be able to see the nuance difference for Raysbridge Road and
See it, John?
And this, of course, Raysbridge Road section of Whispering Pines is extremely close to Sand Hills Farm Life.
Yes, it is.
John, if we can focus on that edge, yeah, if we can just keep kind of zooming into the orange and the yellow.
And are you using the term boundary the same as attendance district?
Boundaries, the perimeter,
Yes.
Yeah, the perimeter of the attendance district.
attendance areas of the area.
So
John,
it's,
can we go even a little bit bigger? Zoom in on Raysbridge Road, because that's the one that, yeah, getting better. There we go.
do you have your laser pointer?
What would you like to do?
Raysbridge.
Keep going over.
See if you can go one more, John.
Oh, that's what I
One
thought
more-
it was.
one more
Okay, I just
clip.
wanted to
Right
make
in
sure that's,
there.
I saw that.
There,
Yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
okay?
And between if I could restate what Laura said, is that this is now back to where it was in draft 1.
Yes.
In draft 2, the yellow would have brought in Raysbridge Road, and now it's back to where it was originally. John, when you and I discussed this the other day, I think it's notable that on each end of Pine Ridge Lake, that there's a gap in the housing. And so we don't have a situation where we have one family in one house and a house immediately next door going to two different schools. There's actually a gap around the edges of the lake that form a bit of a barrier. And correct me if I'm wrong on that, Laura or Mike.
Actually, on the south, on the south side of Pine Ridge, there are contiguous, adjacent homes. There's no students in there.
Okay.
But yeah, we're not affecting families that go to Moore County Public Schools.
So currently, those are families that don't have children
That's
attending
correct.
school, but in the future, perhaps they might.
On the north side, there is none.
So the Sand Hills Farm Life doesn't show as much, but the yellow part.
Okay? So with these refinements, if you look on slide 9, we've got the data, the resulting data. And remember, we've been focusing on the minority percent column. We're focusing on the utilization column, in particular 21, 22, and the ELA proficiency column. And if you look at those numbers and compare it to the current situation, which is the data table at the top, all of the data is in line. We're moving in the direction of the guiding principles. Okay, we're better utilizing, we've got a shorter range on minority representation. We've got, we're not significantly changing the ELA achievement data for any of the schools. It's all positive there. Any questions on the data? All right, and then slide 11,
Can I go back to that for just a minute?
yes,
Something that I do want to point out, when you look at that data table, when you look at Cameron, you will see that in 21, 22, the capacity changes to 400. That's why it's in red. There was a capacity change, just like the new school coming online is in red. And just to remind the board, again, the plan there is that we have the ability to take the 6-classroom modular unit from Northmore, which we already own, which will not be in use anymore after the additions and renovation, at which point it could be moved down to this school because its core capacity is more than the classroom structure. And so that's a very low-hanging fruit to grab to bring that up to also enable it to serve not just the Cameron District, but potentially through the next step to be investigated in Bass Lakeview.
And through this process, we've made it clear to the Cameron and Vast Lakeview communities that that's why in the next phase of our discussion of the consideration of district lines between schools, that is a logical consideration for us. And we owe it to the taxpayers and the county commissioners to consider that, because that's an area where, in our previous discussions in previous years, are we making best use of all of our facilities? Well, at Cameron, the answer is no. We have unused capacity with our core facilities that can be remedied with a nice, safe, 6-unit modular building with bathrooms built into it, and a new playground for Cameron as well. So, but that's 2 years away after we're done with that facility at Northmont. It won't cost us any the labor. There'll be some cost of labor, but we already own that building, and so there is no cost associated with that. So we do want the public to be advised that we're going to take a very serious look at that in the next phase.
So just to be clear, the utilization that's listed under 2021-22 is before any Phase 2 changes to attendance districts. This is just what
Yes, ma'am.
the as-is will be that we can then deal with in the next phase.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, if we put 6 more classrooms at Cameron with no students, then we'll have a terribly underutilized facility at 65%. And then at the same time, Vast Lakeview will be inching up at 103%, which helps everybody to understand the need for us to give serious consideration to that transfer.
John, refresh my memory. Why did we leave out 2021?
We didn't have 2021, we did have 23, 24 previously in there, and we brought it back
Okay.
to 21, 22, because in this area we're talking about, that's the next time that there is a
Gotcha.
capacity change here.
Thank you.
And we anticipate no change, Betty, for 2021.
All right, so if you go now to slide 11, and this is the data on the larger picture. The new school's primary role was to relieve crowding at Sand Hills Farm Life and Bass Lakeview. So if you'll take a look at the utilization, and let's look out at, let's look at 21, 22. Sand Hills Farm Life goes from 151% to 79%. And Bass Lakeview goes from 123% to 103%. So we have relieved crowding right out of the gate, okay? But then if you look ahead to 23, 24, Sand Hills Farm Life is at 83%, still comfortable there, but we still potentially will need to do some work at Bass Lakeview. Then, of course, if you look at the other columns, the proficiency and the minority percentage, we're still in line with your guiding principles. All right? Slide 12. Along with talking about the larger picture, we will continue to monitor membership and development trends. We really need to pay close attention to the capacity impacts of the K-3 class size mandates. That is a huge driver here at all of your elementary schools. Carthage and Cameron are positioned to provide further relief to Sand Hills Farm Life if it's necessary. The new Southern Pines Elementary School is positioned to provide further relief to Sand Hills Farm Life if it's necessary. Time will tell there. The new school on Camp Easter Road will serve a portion of Southern Pines. Remember, it actually sits in the Southern Pines current attendance area. So it will serve some in the future here. The 2 new K-5 schools at Southern Pines and Aberdeen, that's that consolidation of the K-2, 3, 5 schools. Keep that in mind, it's coming up, okay? And then the new Pinehurst School is still coming up, and that's bringing on additional capacity. So that's all a part of the larger picture. We've just gone one step into a much bigger plan here that's going to come along. But we're going slow. We're going slow. We're focusing on relieving crowding at 2 schools that are very overcrowded today. Slide 12. This map represents areas, the circled areas, 3 out, excuse me? Oh, Mike's got animation.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay. We're going to look at 4 areas here, and 3 of the 4 are areas we've talked about from draft 1 to draft 2 to draft 3. Okay?
Or if we could, John, again, if somebody could blow that up, is there any way we
Because
could-
it's an animation, we can't blow it up right now.
After we animate it?
Afterwards,
to the end.
we'll enlarge it.
Okay.
Thank
So the first animation, you want to talk about it?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's currently part of the Sand Hills Farm Life Base. I guess you would call it the southwest corner there. The potential there is to be impacted either by the new school on Camp Easter Road or by the new Southern Pines Elementary School, or both.
So we're circling it, and we're announcing today that this is under consideration in the larger picture, okay? Not for the 1920 school year, but in the larger picture, under consideration. We're looking at it. It may not change, but we just want folks to know, okay? Pay attention, okay?
If I could, John, is it appropriate to mention that our student population in that area also is quite modest?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, it
The
is.
Forest Creek subdivision, for example, we currently have no students that
Elementary students.
attend Sand Hills Farm Life there. So there's a lot of orange there. It looks like a lot of space, but there isn't a saturation of students. So the very modest number of children that live, particularly in Pine Grove, right now, we don't want to move them because we're not sure which school they're going to go to until we get into phase 2. So under our guiding principle of avoiding moving children any more frequently than we need to, we think that it's in that next phase as we look to 2021 where a decision would be made on the school for those children.
That is correct, and that is to reinforce what Laura said earlier about stability of students.
Yes.
Move them once, and throughout our entire process, these 4 areas that they're referencing came up again and again as potential, well, here or here, what's it look like? And as she said, we wanted to be purposeful and take our time. We didn't want to rush into something that could either lock us into a situation we don't want to be, or cause a student to have to move a second time.
And specifically, they could either be at Farm Life, they could be at the new school on Camp Easter Road, or they could be at the brand-new Southern Pines School.
Exactly.
And so, until we get that resolved, then we don't want to move the children one year and then move them the next year and then move them again.
The second circle is circling the Raised Bridge Road area that we had previously discussed. Once again, hinging on the fact how Sand Hills Farm Life utilization and the new Camp Easter Road utilization work out. Third school, as we mentioned before, Carthage is poised to provide relief, if necessary, to Sand Hills Farm Life. Specifically, I think that's Joel Road, is that correct? That area. And as we mentioned before, Cameron is poised to provide further relief to Vast Lakeview along that border between the 2 schools.
Why don't we go make it larger for everybody?
And as we, yeah, please do. And as we do, if I could add to the comments that have been made, Madam Chairman, as we see, it's getting ready to be disappeared, but you can see the Carthage zone, district runs way up to the Chatham and Randolph County borders. There are families that live up that way that have High Falls mailing addresses. And our precious High Falls Elementary School has been losing enrollment. And so if we have families that live that far north and would actually desire for their children to go to High Falls, there are roads that run straight across. So there are options in the next phase for us to look at children who currently are traveling a great distance to Carthage Elementary School, who may go no farther distance to High Falls. bring some numbers into that school that actually could use some attendance, create capacity at Carthage to open the door for a community like along Joel Road or other communities that might then be moved into Carthage. This would be a very good strategic allocation of our facility resources that would be a serious consideration in the next phase of potential student assignment planning.
I have just a language question about what we're calling Phase 2 exactly. So I know that in the spring, we need to start looking at the Southern Pines and the Aberdeen school districts because they will open in the
2020.
2021. Is that right? I'm getting confused. No, because Pinehurst is 2021.
No, that's
Oh, 20/21.
Yeah.
Okay. So the Carthage and Cameron, will that be discussed at the same time as we're discussing Southern Pines and Aberdeen, or is that a separate, will that be at a different time?
Actually, we're considering it now to revisit again during phase 2.
So all together. So all of that will be looked at together. Okay, thank you.
Madam Chairman,
makes
it's the
sense.
superintendent's intention, and I've advised our staff and our consultants that all of the remaining schools be on the table in phase 2.
Sounds good.
And we look at a 1, 2, or 3-year phase-in of phase 2. In other words, it'd be about 3 steps that might occur there depending upon what as each new school comes online, that families know a year to 3 in advance where they're gonna be.
Sounds good. Thank you.
That'll be our challenge. Whether we can do that or not is another issue.
We'll have to roll up our
And
sleeves.
that's our challenge.
And that was my question too, and Dr. Bob, you just answered it. But my other question is, basically, we're holding off a little bit until phase 2 for Vast Lakeview and Sand Hills Farm Life, even though they're getting a little bit pulled, but not what we were considering. Is that correct? Okay.
I don't
getting
think
a lot
we're
pulled.
not moving anybody
It-
from Vast Lakeview to Cameron, and we're not moving anybody from Vast Lakeview or Sand Hills Farm Life to Carthage.
No. I just meant, I'm sorry, to the new school.
Okay.
Yeah, just to the new school.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's wise to leave them, all of them, because when ORAD does another study, who knows, things may change in a couple of years.
So just a final summation of the staff draft 3 or the staff final recommendation. We're moving students or proposing to move students from the 2 most crowded schools into the new school on Camp Easter Road. That are the only changes being recommended for the 1920 school year when that new school opens up.
I think you're going to have a lot of relieved parents.
It's the yellow, it's really, we're focusing in on the yellow
Yes.
at this point.
Focusing in on the yellow.
Okay.
Okay. All right, slide 14 is our timeline. November 5th is your next regular board meeting where we hope there will be an endorsement of the plan for final community input. We have online feedback for that final community input. Will run November 6th through November the 15th. Okay? November 15th, you have scheduled a called work session for a public hearing. The superintendent's recommended plan, which would be the last time parents will have to give input at that public hearing. And then December 3rd, you'll review all the input that you'd received up to that point, and make any final changes you'd like to make before, on December 10th, you would approve the attendance area for that new school on Camp Easter Road. And then at the bottom of the page, just remind you of the next steps that will, we'll hardly have time for the Christmas holidays or anything, and we'll be back looking at it again in February, looking at Southern Pines Elementary, the new Aberdeen school. All righty, and then just a reminder that the appendix has much more detailed information. You can always go there, you get a detailed map, you see all the feedback from the 2 community forums there. And that wraps up our presentation today.
I like the plan.
For November 15th, can you just clarify where, John? I know where it is, but just for the public, where it's going to be and the time?
Carthage Elementary.
6 at the auditorium.
Thank you.
John was preoccupied.
Yeah, I know.
The one thing I wanted to say is that I appreciate the level of detail that has gone into this and the feedback that you have listened to from those in the community and the parents and the staff. This is an enormously challenging project, and I think what it has opened our eyes, we're lucky in a way that we have options with the new 800 individual schools that are opening. So I think what this has done is really open up our eyes to some possibilities of looking at the whole school district in a way that we've not had the opportunity to do before. And so I think the work that you've done so far is especially helpful to lay that groundwork and to begin that process, and then we'll be finishing it by the end of the school year. Right, we'll be done
Yes,
with
ma'am.
coming
That's
up
the
with a plan and then how to roll that out, that it all won't happen at the same time, but that it'll be rolled out over phases is what I heard, or over a 3-year time period
That's currently the plan.
is
Yeah,
the
that's
current
currently
plan.
the
As we work through this, and as we've learned, we learned a lot by just doing these investigations and looking through and looking at the data. The data is guiding, and the principles are guiding how we're moving forward with this. So it's been a long process, I know, but I think a helpful one.
Are we looking at the middle school attendance areas in the process of moving on to the, what did we call this now?
Phase 2.
Phase 2, as these new schools open up and we know we might be drawing other areas in?
There are currently some utilization issues for some of the middle schools, so we would like to present some options to see what could be done possibly for that.
That's my charge, Madam Vice Chair. It's our intention to do that. But when we do it, we're going to continue to apply the lessons we've learned. We have Cameron as our only elementary school currently that sends its graduates to 2 different middle schools. The new school that will open on Camp Easter Road, based on our current feeder patterns, would send children to 2 middle schools and maybe even 3. So when we talk about feeder patterns, we do want some degree of fidelity in feeder patterns, but we also, for efficiency purposes, want to maintain some flexibility and not be locked into this rigid assumption that all the children in a given elementary school are going to go to one middle school. We think we owe it to our taxpayers to make sure that we're making the best use of our facility assets, as long as it doesn't jeopardize our mission to serve our children. And we think we can achieve both. I don't think simply because children leave one elementary school and go to 2 different middle schools doesn't mean that we've compromised our mission. I think we need to be open to that. So that's our preliminary charge as we look to the spring. But if you'll permit us, we'd like to finish this one. And maybe celebrate Christmas and the New Year, and then get on with that after the holidays.
Well, the public needs to understand too, that the children aren't gonna go to any different tracks with the plan we have for the new school. I mean, if they were Vast Lakeview and they were gonna go to, what is it? Cranes Creek, they'll still go to Cranes Creek
That's
and
correct.
stuff, so.
The Vast Lakeview children who
So
come
the-
into the new school may still assume they're gonna go to
Right.
Cranes
Any
Creek.
changes later, but they're not gonna be any right now as far as middle
Farm
school
Life
stands.
children would go to New Century. But we want them to be one community in this new school. We want them to be part of that.
And for clarity of that very dialogue, you can see on the map here, the red line on the map represents our elementary attendance areas. The green line represents middle school. So when you look at this map later and you reflect upon it, as Dr. Grimsey pointed out, the green line is middle school. And you can see how on the top it goes into Cameron and splits it. So it helps you read it clear.
And likewise, it splits the new school district.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to thank you too, because I know I've been in those meetings, and I know you've listened to the public, you've listened to the advisory committee, and I appreciate that. That means a lot, so thank you.
Madam Chair, any further questions or feedback?
Anything else?
And
All
again,
right,
the
thank you.
superintendent's recommendation will be that the board would endorse this plan for further public comment directly to the board after next week.
Thanks.
Understood.
With your permission, Madam Chair?
Yes.
All right, we will look at section 2, item B. This is another area where we've had a lot of community interest in the last month. Preliminary public staff and student suggestions for name of the new elementary school on Camp Easter Road. Mr. Barath.
Thank you, Dr. Grimacy. Okay. As you'll recall, last time you endorsed the plan for us to put together this process and timeline to present to you options for naming the new school. So the very first step we did was we put out to the public on our website portal, what suggestions do you have? We opened it up to everybody in the public. We invited comments from the board. Tim Locklear worked with Sand Hills Farm Life and Bass Lakeview leadership to get the dialogue going in their schools with their teachers and students, and to encourage everyone to go and get online and put their suggestions together there. It was effective. We received a lot of responses to that. We had the portal open for just over 2 weeks, and during that period, there were 504 submissions to that portal. So, a lot was said. Now, some of those submissions were duplicated. Okay, understandably, people may come up with similar things. And so, when you layer the duplications and then refine your count, that led to 66 unique suggestions. So there were quite a few duplicates in there. We also conducted additional research outside that, staff did, and we came up with others to add to that list. The complete listing of all 108, so the 66 unique, plus what was generated from emails received from the board and various staff on it, is attached to this document, and they are broken down in the document by generalization of categories. So whether they're landmark items that are featured close to that area, or by history of the area, or by current use of the vicinity around it, maybe by unique vegetations in the area, heritage of golf, also ties to the military, our current mission, vision, and our taglines, and as well as individuals. So the attachment to the document gives the board the complete list of everything put towards it there. We did, as identified on that list, have suggestions that involve personal names of people. While we talked about this before, that the board policy does not prohibit the school from the board from naming a school after an individual, it has been the board's practice to do assignment of auxiliary facilities to honor those individuals. Those are recent activities the board has done for gymnasiums, for tracks and field areas, for stadiums, and for auditoriums and other venues. In our research, we cannot find any precedent here at Moore County Schools for naming a school after an individual. So now it gets to the bottom of our executive summary list, that where, barring any changes to that practice of the board, we analyzed all those submissions, had a lot of discussion about it, to put together a proposed short list of possible names that staff recommends to the board for consideration and for community input. The suggested names for the new elementary school on Camp Easter Road are McDeeds Creek Elementary, Fairway Elementary, Pine Meadow Elementary, Camp Easter Elementary, and Piney Woods Elementary.
John, we'll add, those are in no particular order.
Correct, they are in no order. They are randomly
Not
placed there.
prioritize them, that is just the staff's short list based on our research and what we've collected.
Correct. Thank you, sir. At your board meeting on November 5th, next week, afford you the opportunity to discuss these recommendations and to approve the short list or a list that you want put together to put on our website portal for public feedback. We'll open the portal the following day on November 6th, and we will close it on November 23rd. We will then provide a summary of all comments and support for any names to the board at their work session December 3rd, and then allow the board additional dialogue discussion at their December 10th business meeting to take action on the naming of the new school. So at this point, Tim Locklear and I are here to answer any questions you may have about the names or about the process you may
We welcome the board making any revisions to this list as well. I think we've done our best, we've done our diligence. The board may wish to offer more than 5 names to the public. Just understand that you don't want to go that direction. You want to get fewer, you don't want more. So you can add more, you can change these between now and next week. Our goal was just to help start your conversation on this. Madam Chair?
Are there any questions or comments? I think it's, I'm amazed that you got it down to 5. Can you answer, what kind of research did you do on the background of these in order to have them make the short list? What were you looking for?
On a lot of the names that we did, we've looked through the historical data here in Moore County on the naming of places, on any of the landmark titles given to places, to see what they were and what the history of those decisions at that time to name a location after. We took a look at, for example, Pine Meadow and Piney Woods, about the heritage of the longleaf pines in the community around there, and what you see when you go out to the job site and you drive by. You see in the background there. Obviously, we also took a look, Catherine Murphy did, through trademarking and making sure that we wouldn't violate anything in our process of it. We reached out to also local historic individuals with a lot of knowledge on some of these places as far as where names and suggestions had originated from, to understand the history.
We were looking for the uniqueness of these names across North Carolina. We sought to minimize the degree to which we were using names that were already used, particularly in our region, and that which was unique. I think we did a lot of research on Camp Easter seals, a lot of research on that to understand it was a camp that served the needs of disabled individuals, particularly children. And of course, it's located on Camp Easter Road, and it had a high degree of frequency of interest from the public. McDeed's Creek had a high degree of interest from the public. It is a creek that runs right along the property. There happens to be a subdivision with that name, but it's also a topographical feature that's right near the property. We had Mill Creek, we had Crystal Lake, we had Little River. You can see those all on the master list. We tried to look with regards to golf heritage. We also looked at horse country heritage, and we did crosswalks to align that with what seemed to be the public interest. We never really got into the personal names because of the tradition that the board has had in not naming entire schools after individual people. So with those, we sort of articulated them. Is that kind of what you're looking for?
It does, yeah, that's
Madam
perfect,
Chair?
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, that helps to provide the context.
Is there, or was there a Mr. McDeed? I know we have McDeed's Creek, I just
Or
wondered.
Mrs.
Or a Mrs., yes.
I personally tried to find
Not
that.
found one.
I didn't ask anybody, I didn't look for any local experts on that. With our Scotch-Irish heritage, I just was satisfied that there was somebody named McDeed at some point that owned property and had the name that fit with, which would align with our heritage. And then the frequency, again, this was another one of these that had an elevated frequency of public interest that was submitted on the portal and rested with that. So unless I heard anything negative about it, I weighed more heavily on the proximity of the creek, similar to Cranes Creek with our other middle school, as satisfactory to advance it into the final 5.
And does McDeed's Creek have an apostrophe?
It does not. That I did research. I could find no evidence of an apostrophe. It is McDeed's without an apostrophe.
All right, any other comments or questions? And I know once we have the name, I know Dr. Capps will probably have some It'll make her life a little bit easier. Yes, she says.
It'll be a fun way for her also to start getting to know her future students by engaging their input on mascot and colors and things like that. We'll let her be involved in that, the more fun activities. These are a little bit more.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you very much for all your work on these, and thank you for the public for submitting some names.
501 of them.
Yeah.
504.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, those
But
were
it-
submissions, 66 unique suggestions, and then I do want to compliment the staff's assistance in the generation of some additional names, just to make sure that we had as many angles covered, and also board members as well submitted some very helpful names.
So during our board meeting next week, the goal would be to solidify what the final list is that's going to go for public comment. And it's not public voting, it's public comment.
That is correct. We're not looking, in order to sort of promote just sort of a sense of togetherness, we don't want to have winners and losers in this process. We'll be interested in public input, yes or no. Are you favorable to this name or not? Ms. Murphy, would an individual in the portal be able to indicate yes on more than one, or do they have to pick one?
Each option will have either yes or no, and then why or why not.
So I could like all 5 of them and give reasons why I do, or I could dislike all 5 and give reasons why I don't, so.
You could say you don't like 3 and say why, and you like these 2 and say why.
That'll be helpful, thank
Yeah,
you.
Catherine showed me the prototype on that. It's very good. I like that approach. So we're not looking for winner-take-all votes here. We're looking for public feedback to a list of names, and either this group of 5 or whatever list the board wants to do. But we would seek your endorsement next week of a list, a workable list of names that we could put up on the portal for input.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, next item.
With your permission, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to Mr. Locklear and guest.
She is no guest, Kate Fall, Director Kate Fall. Good evening again, Madam Chair, Board, Dr. Grimacy. We bring to you this afternoon, last month, we presented to you and identified that the State Board of Education, Department of Public Instruction, identified 2 of our schools as low performing, Southern Middle School and Robbins Elementary. And as required by State Board of Education policy and general statute, they are to develop a plan of improvement, which they already do as part of their school improvement planning process. But also, as a district, we're required to develop a plan of improvement. We asked for your endorsement, and you did endorse last month for us to put those plans out for public input, which is required. We received no input from our public on those plans for suggestions or refinements. And so we bring back to you this afternoon to ask for your potential endorsement of that, approval of those plans to submit to the State Board and Department of Public Instruction. And Kate and I are open to any questions or comments you may have.
Otherwise, there's no change from what the board
No,
saw
sir.
last month. Madam Chairman.
Any questions or comments?
I have one question. Is there any explanation, or do you have any explanation why the performance composite went down for both schools last year, and all the 3 and 4 years previously it had been steadily going up?
Not yet.
We have not gotten
No.
into that part of the
Okay,
analysis.
just curious, because it's unusual. Nothing happened with the way they're measuring the state or doing any of
Not
that
in those
stuff.
subject areas, no.
Okay.
Often when we start digging deeper into the data, you're looking at cohorts as they're coming through, and sometimes a cohort will cause a dip in that performance composite, because as it's traveling through.
I know classes can be unbelievably different, so.
Right.
If I might, Tim, could I add to that?
Sir?
I think it's important to remember that the letter grade and the numerical value of a given school is based 80% on proficiency and only 20% on growth. That makes a school a little bit more vulnerable to changes in the cohorts that come through. And particularly for our smaller schools and our schools that have high percentages of children from homes where their parents really struggle to make ends meet, I think it's fair to say that you could in 1 year have a very strong group of 5th graders who move on, and then the next group of 5th graders struggles a little bit more. Now, teachers can be successful with both groups as measured by growth, but proficiency is still 80%. So if that second group of fifth graders, they could meet or exceed growth, but not,
Oh, yeah, no.
succeed with proficiency as much, that school is at a disadvantage. And I would suggest that, I can't speak to Southern Middle School, but I think clearly in my analysis of Robbins is that we saw that at work. I think if growth mattered more for Robbins, perhaps we would not have seen quite as severe a dip. Is no evidence that the teachers worked any less hard.
Oh, no, I know that.
Certainly
no.
know that.
Well, we're going to do some things to change that, so.
Tim, am I out of bounds? Please
sir.
even
No.
publicly correct me on that if I'm out of
No, sir.
out of
You're
line
not
with
about-
that.
Yeah, I've been looking at that for 20 years. I know.
I thank you for your efforts to pull all of that together, and I know that the school level team did a lot of work on those.
And I appreciated the write-up that was done in Sunday's paper concerning Southern Middle with the capturing the hearts. I think we're going to see some differences there with the group of students coming through that, so.
As well as the
I
work
com-
at Aberdeen
Yes,
Primary. was
that's what I'm saying. the
PBIS.
kind of the Following up from the elementary and the kindergarten students up until the middle school, having that consistency, I think we're going to see the show is going to be, the information will be shown to be positive in the long run.
And I think, I'm glad you brought that up, Dr. Willis Brown, that we see that the work that's happening at Aberdeen Primary paying off at Aberdeen Elementary. They've seen those SPG school performance grade go up, and they exceeded growth and came off of the low performance schools list this year. So we had 3 last year, we have 2 this year, so we're seeing that continuous improvement. And those principals are targeted in on what they need to continue to do to continue to improve their schools.
It's a team effort.
And Tim, you made Molly smile so big back there.
Well, she should be smiling.
Yes, she should be.
Well, the public needs to
Proud
under-
moment, proud moment.
Public needs to understand too, you can never look at 1 year to the next
No.
year. You have to look over a period, at least 3 to 5 years to get any credible information.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair, with your permission?
Yes,
You ready to move on to the next one?
we are. Next
Okay.
item.
We've got Dr. Powers coming forward. Item D, prior public review of student social emotional learning survey. Dr. Powers.
Thank you, Dr. Grimsey, Madam Chair, and members of the board. As a district, we're continually looking for ways to better understand and support our students' needs. I come to you today with a proposal for an administration of a student social emotional learning survey. And what we'd like to do, I'd like to present our plan for administration of that survey, and then also seek your endorsement for gathering parent and community input on the survey, as we've done with other district surveys in the past. So let's first talk about and look at what is social emotional learning. Social emotional learning describes the mindsets, skills, attitudes, and feelings that help students succeed in school, career, and life. Some of these include grit, growth mindset, sense of belonging. Educators use many names for these skills, including, you may have heard, non-cognitive skills, soft skills, 21st century skills, or people refer to the whole child. So those are the types of skills and competencies that we're talking about when we refer to social emotional learning, or SEL. So, why is that important? Obviously, those skills help students navigate their years in school and also help them to be successful beyond school in life and career. It's important for improving student outcomes, both socially, emotionally, and also academically. Social-emotional learning skills cultivate a love of learning, curiosity, and social awareness that can foster a better, safer school environment. And of course, we're all very focused on creating those inviting and safe environments in our schools. Just as what you're talking about, Dr. Brown, through Capturing Kids' Hearts, PBIS, this falls right in line with those models that we have in our schools as well. Also, gathering that formative feedback will improve our culture of data transparency and continual learning in our district. SEL data is certainly a useful school improvement resource. And then also, SEL is closely related to some areas from our recent Youth Risk Behavior Survey results, such as feelings of depression, bullying, safety at school, that we want to work toward improving. So this survey will be a tool to help us address some of those needs that were identified through our Youth Risk Behavior Survey from the spring of 2017. So how will we administer this survey? For this school year, 2018-19, our district has access to the Panorama Education Survey Platform. Panorama is an online survey platform that partners with K-12 schools and districts across the country to both collect and analyze data related to SEL, also school climate, family engagement, and other areas as well. So through Panorama, it's a leading technology platform that can help to improve student outcomes. Panorama offers us a ready-to-use research-backed surveys and the ability to create custom surveys as well. It allows for aggregate data results at the district and school levels, provides the ability to disaggregate results across custom demographics. It allows access to reports and visual displays on both current and longitudinal data. And then also, this is a neat aspect of this program as well. It allows access to Playbook, which is an online professional development platform. So when areas are identified through a survey that may need to be addressed by a school, such as, let's say, sense of belonging is perhaps not a particular strength at a particular school, the Panorama platform actually offers suggestions and PD to the school and staff on how to improve those areas.
Dr. Powers, as you move on to the next slide,
Sure.
Explain to the board, have we had experience with Panorama and what has been the feedback based on that experience, if we've had it?
We have. Panorama was used at Pinecrest High School last year during 2017-18 with Mr. Christina first became aware of that and utilized it at Pinecrest last year. I had a very positive result, was able to share with me a lot of data related to how his school could improve related to social emotional learning of his students, as well as school safety, as well as he also used it with surveying parents, so family engagement, and it was a success which led us as a district to investigate its use across the district and all of our schools.
Did he share that data back with parents and students and staff? And
Yes, sir.
what was their response to that?
It was a positive response that this was a worthwhile endeavor to have Panorama as a.
Was this something Ms. Phillips was excited about continuing to use as she came on board?
She is, and they are. Pinecrest continues, and we're excited to have it for our whole district this year to be able to use. So, the survey process, what we'll do in administering the survey, participation in the survey is voluntary. Schools will look to administer the survey during a 2-week window in January. It is online, so students may take the survey on any device that has an internet browser, so that would include phones, tablets, laptops. Students will access the survey through a link and use their Moore County Schools ID as their access code, and the surveys we anticipate will take around 30 minutes to complete, possibly a little less for older students, possibly a little more for younger students, but basically a class period to complete. We look at how we're going to communicate the process to our parents to make them aware of the survey. We'll do that by posting the survey questions on our Moore County Schools website, so they'll be available for parent review from November 6th through the 16th, and they'll be able to provide their feedback on questions and any feelings that they have related to the survey. The questions and information will also be available through each school office, so parents can certainly visit there to learn more about it and view the questions. Parents will have the opportunity through our website and school offices as well to express that feedback to the principal, to our Office for Student Support Services. We'll also use our Connect Ed system to make parents aware as well. And then also the survey is voluntary as shared, and parents may opt out of having their child take the survey through a written request to their school principal.
So just to clarify, is it an anonymous survey?
It is an anonymous survey. There are 2 portions, and I'll answer that question as I go to the next slide and share with you here. So basically, what we're doing is we're seeking to gain student perspectives on their own SEL skills, as well as their perspectives on their school supports and environment at their particular school. So you can see there are actually 7 competencies that we'll be measuring, 3 related to SEL skills, and then 4 related to student supports and environment. So the 3 SEL competencies are grit, growth mindset, and social awareness. These particular competencies are not necessarily anonymous and could be viewed by the school to determine, what areas are our students weaker in, and how can we better support them if perhaps they are lacking in a growth mindset. What can we do to help them to build a better growth mindset? And those are the only areas of the survey that would not be anonymous, and school staff would have access to be able to that data. Other areas such as sense of belonging, school safety, teacher-student relationships, engagement, those are all anonymous. The data is as a part of the survey. The questions are a little bit different for grades 3 through 5 students as compared to students in grades 6 through 12. Catherine, you can click on 3 through 5 is fine. And you can scroll down. And this is some examples of what the questions look like. Your goals, these particular questions are related to grit. So you can see question, how often do you stay focused on the same goal for more than 3 months at a time? And students have a Likert scale in which that they would answer the questions. All the questions are on that Likert type scale, and for the most part, questions are very similar. There are a few more questions for grades 6 through 12 students as compared to grades 3, 5. I think there's 42 questions for 6, 12, and 38 in grades 3 through 5. We are asking 2 custom questions of our own as a part of the survey, one of which is at least one adult at this school truly cares about me, and a second, there's at least one adult at this school I can go to if I need help. The other questions are all standard questions from Panorama, which are research-based in terms of their reliability of responses.
So they have tested these questions on that age group, is what you're saying?
They have.
And would we have the opportunity to aggregate that data and look at it as compared to other states or other school districts of similar size, or is this are we purely going to look at our own school by school?
We will have the ability to look at the data in comparison to other schools and districts like ours who are a part of the Panorama Education Platform, and I will say that it's large. They're in, I think, 48 states.
It was an impressive sample.
It's a large sample size.
If you go, they have an online website. They give a lot of this information. I'm curious, what kind of cost are we talking about to the school district?
So for this year, for our entire district, all of the survey capabilities for both the district and our schools, 2 different professional development days for training, and then also a project manager for our district that helps us to coordinate our district-wide surveys. The process was approximately $45,000.
Okay. And
if I could note, Dr.
Yeah,
Brown, that's
sure.
paid from federal Title IV funds.
okay,
That is meant to, part of the purpose behind those Title IV funds is to really involve our parents and community and students, and so that's certainly right in line with the purpose of this.
sounds good. I was looking at some of the sample surveys for the student supporting environment. Within the sense of belonging and school safety type situations, I didn't see where it really addressed bullying per se. How are we aggregating that information out? Or are we?
Well, in this particular survey, we would not be, but we have the opportunity to use this as many times as we would like as a district. So there are other opportunities for different surveys, as well as individual schools to do their own. So that's one piece of this that we were excited about, was that each school, every school has different needs.
Right.
So if there are certain areas where, maybe bullying is more of an issue at one school than another, they can certainly develop their own surveys and be able to.
And as I looked on the website, and it may not be in this particular thing, but you may have found it in your research. Is there a correlation to the PBIS and capturing the hearts that we're using, and what is found on this survey? What we do within the survey?
No particular research related directly to capturing kids' hearts or PBIS, but there is research around that shows that improving students' social emotional learning skills does decrease discipline issues, thus creating a more positive culture at school.
Somebody's got a dissertation waiting to happen.
You're done with yours.
Let me add that last year we administered the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, and we will do so again next year.
This spring.
For this coming
Yes, sir.
spring.
Right.
So it's been 2 years. So this isn't intended to, the bullying questions are on the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. These questions are similar to what we did with the Serve Center a few years ago. We didn't want to mimic the Teacher Working Conditions Survey. The Teacher Working Conditions Survey, if you remember, I said that was sort of the thermometer to check for the fever. And the Serve survey that we went a little bit deeper with our faculties had to do with the blood test. Well, that's similar to this. This is the blood test to the thermometer being the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. So we don't want to just repeat those. These questions are of a different kind of nature. This gets at, sort of the whole perceptions that our students have in terms of the whole social and emotional climate. Whereas what you're asking about, Dr. Brown, is that, what are those specific behaviors, such as bullying, that I've either been victimized by or I've engaged in? Both are important, but they serve two different purposes. The other thing I want to add, too, is on the cost. The purpose of this is to demonstrate to the board and to the public that whenever we ask questions of this nature that stray from academic endeavors, it's been our tradition to put that out and be transparent about that. So allow the board to scrutinize that. The total cost that was cited by Dr. Powers and Mr. Locklear has to do with the total commitment that we have to Panorama, not just the survey itself, which of
Right.
course is under $50,000, which is within our small purchasing authority. So this is just about the board providing some advice and consent on the survey itself that's similar to what we've done with the youth behavior.
I think it's very important that we know and that our community knows that we care about what our students are feeling. And by doing this, and again, as I hear from parents when they get ready to transfer a student out, oftentimes it's middle school or the beginning of 5th grade, somewhere where bullying seems to be more prevalent as they get that age. And so as we can show that we are the caring people that we are, and that our teachers do care and want to work with our students and parents to help our students not to fall into this situation, and to help them deal with confrontation differently, as opposed to what we've seen happening in the state and around the country.
And as we get into, certainly into the second semester, many of our district-wide surveys are done more in the second semester and toward the end of the year. This platform will be what we'll use with all of our district surveys this year, including, as Dr. Grimacy mentioned, the Youth Risk Behavior Survey that we'll do in the spring, as well as we have plans for a kind of a school climate culture type survey, which we'll also develop through this platform as well. So if we continue to use this in the future, it does, the data analysis that it provides at the click of a button is amazing, kind of like Educator's Handbook. So if we continue to utilize the program, we'll have that with us and be able to have that aggregately from year to year. So that'll be great.
Will there be a model at each school in terms of how they share that with parents and staff, the results from the survey? Is there some thinking around that already?
We actually, not per se, but yet we do need to consider that. How will we do that?
It's my expectation that this, the outcomes of this survey will be shared with the parent advisory committees at each of our schools. And each of our schools do have them, do they not, Mr. Locklear? Yes, we do. Okay. So, yes, the answer is yes.
So we will share absolutely with those parents, of course. I do, what we would like to do is get your endorsement to seek parental feedback on this and community feedback over the next month. And what I would do would be come back in December and bring that feedback back to you at that time, and then ask for your consent to administer our survey in January.
You said it was a 2-week window,
Yes, ma'am.
so we're gonna, with the high schools tied in with exams.
It would depend. We've not set the window in January yet, but we'll consult with our principals and make sure it's at a time that works best for them.
Most exam periods go much longer than
Right.
they actually need for the
Right.
exam, so,
Right. That's a
Be-
good suggestion.
well, just be a way to use that time.
Sure. Other questions?
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you for thinking of our students. All right, do we need to take a little break?
Yeah.
How are we feeling? Do we need a little
5-minute break.
5-minute break? She says yes, okay. 5-minute break. Be back at
Breaky, breaky, breaky.
3:26 or
Breaky,
27 or
breaky,
something.
breaky.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. At this time, I'll turn it over to Dr. Mike Metcalf for item 2E.
Good afternoon, Dr. Grimacy, Madam Chair, members of the board. It's good to see you this afternoon. I bring to you a request from the Calendar Committee. As you know, Senate Bill number 2 provides you, the Board of Education, the opportunity to forgive the instructional hours missed during Hurricane Florence. We recommend that you do that. If you choose to take that action, you'll forgive 38 instructional hours. That's 6 days and the 2-hour delay. And the action will allow staff to be able to be paid for that time and for us to then have 31 banked hours as we move into the winter months. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Are there any questions or comments?
I just think it's great that we have that time banked in. I know the teachers always, snow days, not hurricanes so much.
And I think we're gonna need it this winter, I mean.
Let's not make any
Hush.
predictions,
I know.
please.
Hush, Ms. Caldwell,
I
please.
know, I know.
And the federal government had to do their thing so we could do this, not just the
It
state.
have to be a declared disaster area, which we
I appreciate the detailed listing of where we lost the hours and where we gained them back in. So this chart is extremely helpful. I'm hopeful the public will find it equally helpful.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I have no further questions. All right. Thank you very much, Dr.
Thank you,
Metcalf.
Dr. Metcalf. With your permission, Madam Chair, I'll now introduce Dr. Anita Alpenfels, who'll be working in concert with our School Board Policy Committee Chair, Dr. Betty Wells-Brown. Ladies, I'll let you all proceed as you have planned.
We'd like to present to the board, for first reading, revised policies. The large majority deal with coordination between what is the State School Board Association policies and trying to get that information put together with, so that there's alignment, and looking at policies so that our faculty and administrators have guidelines. Questions?
Anyone have questions on some of the policies? I do have on policy 2425, which is the gifts and bequests. Does that include?
Trying to pull mine up.
Oh, yeah,
give
so
me a
it's
second.
item D. Does that include if individuals or like a team or a classroom want to get together with the rest of the persons in the class or the other parents in the class or the members of the team in terms of a joint gift? Are there any issues regarding that?
We wanted to keep it general so that if that occurred, such as, parental gifts of groups with a thank you to the school or to the employee, that it could be done as such.
Okay, I just want to make sure we don't discourage any thank yous that parents might want to
No,
give for.
no, and that's why we wanted to keep it general.
Okay.
It might be easier, Dr. Wells-Brown, if you specified what it is we would not do. What's an example of something clearly that we would want, the policy would want to guard against?
Well, we want to guard against, I guess, a fairness for students, so that there's not a, this child, because this parent can afford it, would get something that this child wouldn't. So by having it as a group gift or small individual gift cards or something like that for teachers, because that's always, at Christmas time, that's always a benefit. That,
I can give you an
You and I were
example.
chatting earlier, I think it was the idea of a monetary
Yes,
gift
yep.
from one parent to a
to the teacher, yes.
A gift card from one parent to a teacher, that perhaps if we had a policy that encouraged group giving to group receiving,
Right.
perhaps a group of
And
parents to a group of.
That sort of thing, and also so that the teacher doesn't feel embarrassed by saying, "Oh well, how much is this worth? Because I can only take X number of dollars," and we don't want a teacher to feel embarrassed by accepting.
But an individual
There-
parent could still give an individual gift
certainly.
card. That's,
Again, that's why the generalities of doing. We encourage the group situation so that the parents that everyone could feel a part. Because some people can give $5 and some people can give $25.
it's just not always easy to coordinate the groups.
No,
But as long as
yeah.
that's okay, like I know that happens a lot on teams and that type of thing.
Well, and to avoid putting undue pressure on a teacher because a parent has given them a very bountiful gift, and now they feel bad at giving this child the grade they may have actually earned, as opposed to supplementing their grade. So, to eliminate that kind of thing happening.
Excluding the money type stuff, what you have to watch out for is, let's say, PTA wants to donate a piece of equipment, or is gonna buy a piece of equipment for the playground, and it doesn't meet safety standards. In other words, the administration has to have the authority to approve any type donations like that before people actually, spend the money to do them. How much maintenance is it gonna be for us? Does it really meet the code for schools and stuff like that?
Yeah,
Because that can be, if they don't ask or let administration know what they're gonna do before, it can end up, it has ended up
And
being a
again,
problem. in other
this is
places.
more of guidelines as opposed to specificity, so that, depending on the what might occur.
And this doesn't preclude any supplies for the classroom that a
no,
parent
no.
might give to
No.
support the teacher. I know at the beginning of the year, when all of
Stuff
those
the bus.
supplies are in really, stuff the bus, but even when they do that in an individual classroom,
Right.
that doesn't preclude
No,
any of that.
no.
Okay.
And again, when we have brand new teachers who've never taught before, and a parent comes in and sees, there should be a rug here, and a brand new teacher doesn't have the money, and the parent has a rug that they can donate to the classroom, things like that could be done.
So you're just looking for excessive?
Yes.
That's what the
Yes.
concern is with this policy.
And we would hope that if a teacher is going to go online and do a donors choose or a GoFundMe account, that she would discuss this with a principal beforehand. Because the principal really needs to know what a teacher is asking
Yes.
for. If you're raising money to take kids on a trip or to buy a camera to use in your classroom or whatever it might be, it needs to be supported by the administration in there as well, but not the central administration, working with the principal
Right.
or the immediate supervisor to do that.
Okay, I just didn't want to, we have some generous
Oh,
parents
yes.
who want to
Sure
help
do.
out,
Which
what
is
the
nice.
classroom
I mean,
needs are.
it's a wonderful problem to have, but we
And-
don't want the teacher to feel compromised or the employee to feel compromised.
And we do have nonprofit organizations within the schools through some of our Boosters Club, the PACs and whatnot, that can handle large donations that can be
Gladly
then funneled or
accept.
channeled to the right teacher or area as well.
Sounds good.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a couple of other, these should be pretty small, if I can find my notes. For the federal reporting, the next policy, 2510, are there, federal grant administration, are there any additional resources that we need to help carry out this policy, or is this part of, I'm looking at Mr. Bundy, this is part of his,
Actually,
It's a-
that would be as much Mr. Bundy and Mr. Locklear.
I can actually speak to that. We already have procedures that,
okay,
that ensure that we comply. But a recent audit really, and actually Neil just felt like we really need the policy.
oh, we just didn't
and
have a
then
policy.
Have the procedures to attach to policy. Felt like that was more solid and more in compliance with what the federal government expects.
So we already have the procedures, we just didn't have the policy. So
Policy
we've
to
already
go
been
with.
doing this, it just
Yes.
wasn't in our policy. Got it.
We had a federal audit this past spring, we had to update some of our purchasing and policy guidelines, all those have been updated. I think we're just trying to match the policy over
Yep.
with those new regs and new guidelines.
That's all I had. Did anybody have any other
Other
questions on the
questions?
policy?
I want to thank the committee and Anita for their help and support in this.
Especially Anita, because you have to type all that up, so thank you for doing all that.
With your permission, Madam Chair,
Yes.
Mr. Bundy will assist us with Section 2, Item G, H, and I.
Get comfortable.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Dr. Grimacy, the first item I'd like to present is the first quarter budget resolution, just to update for items that have changed since the preliminary budget was approved by the board. Many of the changes relate to Fund 1, the State Public School Fund. Currently, the budget is $76,491,574. Increase is $945,574. and you'll see the items that have changed since the adoption of our preliminary budget process. Some of the items just to mention is PRC 015, the School Technology Fund, a fund we get each year, $366,000. We also have, you notice the third item down is $142,308 is increase in PRC 039, which typically is school resource officers. That is made up of two items this year. There was the approval of a help grant of $78,468. That money is being used to further expand our behavioral intervention team by employing a counselor with those funds. And then $63,840,000 safety equipment grant. That is also a new grant this year. That is being used to develop an emergency alert system at all of our schools. So those items are new grants this year that we were fortunate enough to be awarded from the state. And then the others are just the initial allotments. You don't get all your funding right at the beginning of the year. It comes in some cases later in the year, so you'll see some adjustments for developmental day. PRC 073 is school connectivity. That is used for our broadplex internet WAN wire services that we have in our district. So those are just some of the items that have changed since your preliminary budget. You'll notice that the other items are pretty much what they were. No changes to the other items in our budget for the various funds. And what you actually are approving is the budget resolution, which is, Kathy, you'll pull up that link, please. And then I'll be happy to answer any questions you have. The budget resolution is just what the board is actually approving to make the changes to our budget, which reconciles to our financial books. That's really what the board is approving, is a budget resolution that is a recap from the executive summary. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
None here.
Any questions? All right. Thank you, Mr. Bundy.
Yes, ma'am. Next.
Let's see. The next item is the budget calendar. And the budget calendar is one that the board adopts each year. We present a budget calendar just to kind of chart the roadmap that the board will follow in developing the budget that will be ultimately approved by the board through recommendation by the superintendent. So it kind of documents that process. And with the budget calendar, a second addition to that is the approval of the budget committee. The past 2 years, we've had a budget committee that has worked as an advisory board to myself and Dr. Grimacy. And what we would request is that through the recommendation is that the board would appoint 2 members of the board as a liaison to the committee to help advise and direct the budget process for the new year, the 1920 school year. As we start approaching those developments and processes, the budget committee is a great help to that process and that development of the budget. So really the recommendation is twofold. One, to approve the budget calendar and timetable. And then the second recommendation or request would be for the chair to nominate 2 members of the board to serve as a liaison to the budget committee. Last year, Chairman Miller and Vice Chairman Ms. Carter served on that committee last year, and we thank them for their work, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions? Anyone else interested in serving on the budget committee?
You all can handle it.
We love numbers.
Yeah, I do have a question about your calendar, and I think we hit this every year, but the budget presentation to the county commissioners on April 16th, is that date been verified with their calendar?
I would confirm that with Mr. Vest. Usually we present in April, but I'll make sure we're on the list.
That just happens to be spring break, so I just point that out.
Yes, ma'am. I will confirm with
Not
Mr.
that
Vest and make a change if
It's
if
just,
that's
well,
needed.
it's just a matter of board representation there for those of us who have kids,
Yes, ma'am.
which is you and me. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Sometimes those dates are not flexible, so I get it. And thank you for the backup documentation, too. It was interesting to see what you're giving out to the schools to get their information about their needs
Yes, ma'am.
and resources required. And I saw that the link back to Mr. Barath's facilities needs as well. So that's a great way to keep that updated.
My third item relates to the designation for FEMA assistance related to federal disaster, as we referred to with the presentation of the calendar. Through the federal declaration, Moore County is part of that FEMA disaster declared area. And we have John and I have met with FEMA representatives actually last week on October 24th. There was a whole 6 or 7 came in to meet with us. Mr. James Montgomery is the lead on that. So we have been developing our worksheets and pulling together our request to be submitted to FEMA. So that's kind of where we are in the process. However, it also requires the board to designate a representative by the district to be named as the lead for the FEMA application. And we would like to recommend that the board name Dr. Grimacy as the primary agent, and then myself as the secondary agent, and also with the assistance of Mr. Barath to gather that information and present our claim to FEMA and their representatives. And that's the request that we'd make to the board as far as naming the representatives for Moore County Schools.
We're just required to get board approval for.
Yes, sir.
So we can fill out the form.
Yes, sir.
Are there any questions, comments? That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
With your permission, Madam Chair,
Yes,
I'll invite Mr. Barath to come forward and assist us with Section 2, items J and K.
Thank you, Dr. Graham. See, if it's okay with the board, I'll talk about both of them at the same time because they are identical. The town of Robbins has been fortunate to receive a grant to improve their water infrastructure throughout the town, and that has a great impact on benefit to at least middle school and Robbins Elementary School. As part of their efforts to improve the pressure and the quality of water to our schools, they do have on both those sites a need to come with an easement to cross water lines to make connecting loops to increase quality and pressure. And so we have before us here over at Robbins a request for one easement, and in all these locations, the proposed easement for the water lines will not cause any lack of opportunity at the school sites to improve for any physical needs, whether it's expansion of buildings or parking or play areas. These will not interfere with any of those, will not be a burden onto the board, and are at no cost obligations to the board. So at Robbins, it's one easement. However, at Elise, they're asking for 2 because a lot of our properties in the county are comprised of multiple parcels that are assembled to make the school property. And so when you have multiple parcels, you have to get an easement for each specific parcel. So at Elise, because it crosses through 2 parcels, there's 2 requests for the deeds there. And so with that, staff has reviewed this with legal counsel, and they have approved the wording of the deeds and for the board consideration. I'm here to answer any questions you may have.
Do we own that land, or is it the county own that land?
This is our property.
We do.
Are they
Moore County
giving
Schools.
us any kind of money to do that, or are we doing?
There is no cost for them at this time that staff has recommended because it does provide a benefit to the schools to improve pressure, which we have struggled with, water pressure at both sites, and it improves the quality of water through the volumes they're able to circulate through.
So will the grant that they have then pay for the upgrade for the actual, and do we know when that work will occur?
They need to have these documents and everything executed by December 1st and turned in for the grant, and I think at that time, with their engineering documents, they start getting the funds, and then they can begin the work. So I'd have to confirm with David Lambert, and I can provide the board an update.
But it would be like in the next year or 2, not 5 or 10 years down
Yes.
the road, I guess is what I'm looking at. It's something that would happen because of this
Next year.
grant. Okay. Great. I'm sure they'll appreciate the extra water pressure.
We will.
Any other questions? Nope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This time, Madam Chairman, with your permission, I'll invite Dr. Powers to come up and review this month's requests for out-of-state field trips.
Yes, I bring 4 out-of-state field trip requests for your consideration this month. 2 from Pinecrest High School, 1 for the speech and debate team to travel to Fairfax, Virginia. For the George Mason University for a speech and debate tournament there. That is coming up the end of this month, November 30th through December 2nd. Second request from Pinecrest for their choir to visit Atlanta, Georgia for the World Strides Choral Festival, and that is in the spring, March 29th through 31st. Union Pines High School has a request for their Navy Junior ROTC cadets to travel to the Norfolk Naval Base in Norfolk, Virginia, coming up in December, December 11th through 13th. And then finally, Aberdeen Primary School, as they've done the past couple of years, request to take their second grade students to Myrtle Beach for a day trip for those students to develop real life experiences and background knowledge that will allow them to relate with non-fictional reading and informational text about the beach, ocean, and seashells, since the majority of those students don't have that experience since the first trip to the beach for many of those kids. Questions?
Any questions?
Question is, or not, it's not really a question, just a comment, is it, I hope it's going to be warm on December 6th. Because they've done that trip in the spring in the past.
Yeah, they have in the past. The school, yeah. I think that has something
It's
to do
gonna
with
be a good weekend.
It
We're
will be
gonna-
good,
we're
yeah.
gonna-
Maybe with the
think
transition
positive.
that will be made with administration.
Just for those
So
kids
we
to
can
see
get that
the
in
ocean
before.
for the first
Yeah.
time.
No toes in the ocean.
Yeah, you watch.
It'll be, hey, there's some nice days at the beach in December.
Try to keep those toes out of that ocean.
The way our weather will be, it'll probably be 70 degrees in December.
be.
Who knows?
Thanks, Seth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Seth.
Madam Chair, the staff is available to assist the board in determining the assignment of items on your regular business meeting agenda for next Monday.
So it looks like, from our discussions today, that both item 2A and 2B from today might be items we want to consider as action items.
Mhm.
Are there any other items that we would consider as action items?
That's all I had.
All right, so 2A and 2B will become action items for next Monday's board meeting. Do you have that, Sonia?
And
Wonderful.
that's consent.
Okay, should we go straight into reports?
Yes, ma'am, with your permission. Invite Ms. Fall and Mr. Locklear. Are you joining her, or is she by her? Okay.
Just trying to sneak behind you.
I did, sorry.
I like to join Director Falk. She always makes me look smart, so I always like to-
No pressure.
I always like to do that. Thank you, Dr. Grimacy. Madam Chair, Board, thanks for letting us share with you some information. It's been a bit delayed this year. First, as a result of the Hurricane Florence pushing back our day 20. And then we had various demands at our October meeting that pushed us into sharing this out today. But Kate, as always, and her team, and working collaboratively with our principals, has done a great job of tracking our data, making sure we have a great system and process. That this year was even refined to start on August 1 of who was enrolled in our schools, and starting to look at how that compared to where our projections were. And Kate and her team worked with principals throughout that time. We worked with them throughout the first 20 days of monitoring where their student numbers were, which directly correlate to the number of teachers that they're qualifying for. So Kate's done a great job at that. As we shared early on in September after day 5, we saw a growth in our student enrollment this year. So it was certainly a positive shift for us, a positive trend that last year we saw go down a little bit. This year we're seeing that trend reverse. And so Kate has done a nice job of looking at not only overall numbers with this presentation, but sharing with you by our areas where we see our growth, our trends by area, and then overall percentage change. So I'll let Kate kind of walk us through that presentation.
Okay, so while it may not seem like it, today is only the 37th day of school. So all the numbers you're reporting are actually going to be our day 20 numbers. Is this gonna work, Catherine? Yay. Okay.
So based on our self-reported day 20 enrollment numbers, Moore County School enrollment in grades kindergarten through 12th grade is up 123 students from day 20 last year. We do not include our pre-K students in this calculation. Each year, North Carolina Department of Public Instruction projects our enrollments for planning purposes. They projected our enrollment at 12,768, and as long as we stay within 100 of that number, there's no change to our state allotment for teachers. We stand only 20 students above that projected number as of day 20. We began planning for next year at day 40, based on the numbers that we have that come in. We utilize day 20 historical data to project student enrollments and teacher allotments. The hardest thing to project is the kindergarten enrollment because there's no existing data to tell you who's going to be coming in. So we utilize the school's 3-year kindergarten enrollment number for projection purposes. The 3-year and the 5-year is very similar, so we use the 3-year. We also removed the Community Learning Center at Pinckney from our projection numbers for 2 reasons. The first one is the alternative nature of the school makes it hard to project numbers at that school. And the second is the vast majority of students at CLC move between CLC and another Moore County school throughout the year, whether it's to them or from them, and therefore it keeps us from counting students twice in our projected numbers. So remember that all the numbers I show from here forward, unless noted otherwise, are without CLC included in that population.
But is it without the students?
Without the students, yes.
Okay. So even though they're going to another school, the school doesn't get credit for it?
Oh, they will, I'm sorry.
Okay,
If
that was
they're
my
already
question.
enrolled in another school besides CLC,
Right,
then yes,
right.
that's.
So even though you're not counting it, we're not missing any?
Yeah, you're not missing.
Okay.
Our projections for the 2018-19 school year was 12,536. This is 242 students less than we ended up with. So this is our district count of our day 20 enrollments, not including CLC. So again, our number was 12,724. This is 117 more students than day 20 last year. That's the green columns. First number is the enrollment, and then the second number is the difference. And then 188 more students than were projected, shown in the salmon color. Again, first number being the number, the second being the difference. Here's the school-by-school comparison of our actual enrollment this year to the same day last year, and our projections, again, the green being what we were last year and the salmon color being what we projected last year. Some standouts here at our elementary school level is Pinehurst Elementary had 22 students less than we projected. That had to do with our kindergarten class for the vast majority of it. Sandhills Farm Life had 28 students more than we projected. And West End and West Pine Elementaries both have substantially more students than last year and than we projected. This is the K-8 middle schools and high schools. You'll see on here, New Century Middle School has 69 more students than day 20 last year and 51 more students than projected. And Southern Middle School also had an increase of students, 27 more than last year and 34 more than projected. Our Pinecrest High School number was the closest to our estimate. We're only 1 off from our projection. When you look at feeder patterns, we can more closely see what we're experiencing in growth across the district. Areas 1 and 3, which is Union Pines and Pinecrest High School's feeder pattern, have seen between 1.75% and a 1.92% growth over last year. Meanwhile, Area 2, in the northern part of the county, has seen a decrease in enrollment of 4.27%. Only Elise Middle School saw an increase in students.
I do want to point out here that although it's been corrected in some materials, it's not on the overhead here. It should be 0.995% overall increase. That has been corrected.
Or 1.0.
Or 1.0.
If you round
There's a decimal issue.
It
It's a decimal issue.
it was a mathematical calculation error on my part. Decimal's in the wrong spot. So in summation, again, that's we have a 0.995 or 1% increase in our population. We were under projected by 188 students due mostly to unforeseen population increases at a few of the elementary schools and most of our middle schools. As you've heard from multiple other reports across the past 2 years, it's very hard to project those numbers. And we are very close to the state's planning allotment, and we see no change in teacher allotment at this time. So we will be sharing with you some class size information at the December board meeting that we'll be presenting on the K-3 class size verification. So at this time, we're available for any questions.
And that would be at the work session, I
Yes,
believe.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
When was actually day 20? Was it during the storm stuff?
It was. It would have been, I believe, I have to double check this, but I think
Yeah,
the
that's what I
fourth day
thought.
of the storm was day 20.
When we enroll new students, do we ever collect data as to where they, I mean, I know we find out where they attended school the year before, but is that ever gathered to see why we gained an increase we weren't expecting?
We've looked at it in a very broad sense. We have started to utilize PowerSchool, which is our data management system, has a drop-down feature that allows us to determine what state somebody has come from. That had not been previously being used, but we've started using that this year. So we'll be able to do some pulls in relationship to that and telling you if they came from in-state or out-of-state. And we can do some pulls and some individual records to see what their last school of attendance was. But to disaggregate that data is a little bit difficult to do. So individual schools have done that, but we as a district have not currently done that.
I just think it would be interesting to see if we gain back homeschoolers or charter school students returning, or I know you can't do it with kindergartners, obviously, since they're all new, but.
Or just new people moving in
Yeah, or new people to the community, yeah.
I will tell you that the data manager's sense, especially at the schools that saw a large increase, was that it was new people to the area, a lot of it military connected. That was the unofficial sense from the data managers.
I have another question. That does not have anything to do with these numbers, but is there any way, are we keeping track of any kids that have preschool before they go to kindergarten? Is it anything like that in
We can
PowerSchool?
pull that data. We don't currently have an existing report that we do on that, but we can pull that information as long as they were in a Moore County Schools preschool program.
Yeah, oh, well, but I'm talking about preschool from everybody. You can't just ask the question, okay?
Yeah, if it's not
It'd
a.
be nice to have to do
Right,
some
if it's not a
comparisons.
state
Yeah.
controlled or sponsored pre-K, there's not a way for us to track that, at least not easily.
Thanks.
And there may be, if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Dennison, we do ask some questions as they're kindergarten registration that we are able to gather that. But it's not through PowerSchool. It'd be more through the
Yeah,
kindergarten
yeah.
registration.
Well, it really wouldn't have any significance unless you knew all of them that went to preschool before, not just the ones in our county, and what I would try to do with it, so, thanks.
For the schools where there were significant differences in what we planned for and what we had, especially, have we had to make any changes in teach staffing or that type of thing? What kind of changes had to happen?
Great question. Where, as Dr. Grimsey has shared, when the budget was passed, we have a concise number of teaching positions that were passed in that budget, 15 less than were the previous year. Therefore, we had to monitor that very tightly and make sure we had cut our teaching positions by 15. So basically what that means is with K-3, we have no choice. If the student numbers went over what our cap was, which was 22, state cap is 23, so we would play in between those. We would have to push out additional positions, but all within the concise number of teaching positions that we had. We see that our middle schools had probably our largest growth among our schools. We were not able to push out any additional positions to our middle schools, and we'll be taking a look at the ranges of our class sizes next month and how that impacted our class sizes. As we've heard before, unfortunately, there are no class size limits in grades 4 through 12. And we're tied to having to stay to those class size limits in K-3. And when you have a concise number of teaching positions in your budget, it does create some challenges.
Have you had to move staff around at all in the elementary schools to make
I've had
some of this work?
situations where we've had schools that did not have the projected numbers than we anticipated, and we've transferred those staff members to another school to accommodate for a K-3 situation. Yes, ma'am.
Tim, I'd like to clarify something. K-3, that we did not need, you said there are no additional teacher allotment, but did that apply to K-3 too? If we had more, because the legislature said if you got, they take the number of kids and divide it by, if we had more that would add another teacher, would that teacher just come from higher above, or would they really allot us another teacher?
They come from grades 4-12.
Okay,
You have
but,
to move that teaching position from the concise number of teachers you have in 4-12.
so really, what they want for K-3 doesn't really have any significance then if they never make any allotment changes. If we needed more, They say they'll give us this many for this many, like 18 in kindergarten, and that's not in play then, as far as the number of teachers we get? Because we don't get additional, we just have to take one, even though they say they would give us one for every 20 students, or whatever. We would just have to take one from secondary school.
Well, where they say they've accommodated for that is by allotting additional teachers in enhancement classes, K-5. And where you've gained additional teachers for enhancement teachers. We gained approximately 7 teachers.
I knew they had a story somewhere, I was curious.
So if
So
we've been
to answer
100
that
over,
question fully, to accommodate, they're saying that that's accommodating for the number of teachers you need to lower that class size.
but so if we'd been 100 students over their estimate, would we have gained a teacher?
101.
You can
101.
request additional teaching positions if you're 101 students over what they project you, the state projects you to be. They don't guarantee they'll send it to you, but you can ask for it. And we were prepared to do that. We were gathering our data, early indications were that we might have been over 100 of what this planning allotment was. And Mike and I and Kate were working to be ready as soon as we had that confirmed to send that request, but they don't guarantee they'll send it to you.
One other question, real quick. Departure data. When a child did not return to a school this year, is there follow-up being done as to why that child has left the system?
Within PowerSchool, you have to document, if a child is under 16, you have to document where they went before you withdraw them from the system. So yes, we do have that for students who are under 16.
So would we have numbers gathered at the county level that tell us how many have departed for a charter school or for homeschool or
We have done that.
leave the state?
We can pull that. We have done that for schools at their request, individual schools. We've not looked at that as a district, although we can pull it. We have not done a deep analysis of that as a district level. We do consider that when we talk about our projections for next year. We talk about that.
Obviously, yeah.
And so we've looked at it, just not any deep analysis at the district level. But individual schools have definitely requested that data and done some research of their own.
Remind me how the planning allotment is determined for each school. Do we determine that, or is that a DPI determination?
We project the student numbers, and therefore, based on that, the formula of the ratios that we allot teachers, we use those student numbers to project the number of teachers that the school would need.
So overall, we were close. There was just
Pretty
some
close.
great variations within
Yes,
some
ma'am.
of the schools. Okay,
Pretty close.
thank you.
But the state allotment is what determines the number of full-time equivalent positions on budget line PRCO.
If we all met in Raleigh Convention Center and had kids in one place, that would work out perfectly.
That's correct.
But we don't,
But we do not.
thankfully.
So can you give us a rough estimate as to what the largest 4th or 5th grade classroom happens to be?
I would say we have a range of around 32 or so,
that's probably
33 in
about
4th
right.
and 5th grade. And we have a range of probably about mid-30s in our middle school, if I'm not mistaken.
I would say
Kate.
that's about right, 30,
Same
31.
with high school.
And
Not
that's
ideal,
consistent
but
with what I've been observing as I've visited classrooms this fall.
Thank you.
Thank you for gathering and sharing this data.
Madam Chair, with your permission,
Yes.
I'll invite Mr. Barath forward to set the stage for a very important event that is upcoming. And what he's doing to prepare the location.
That's right.
Are we getting pictures?
Okay. So, great day, lots of things, and we're going to end it with something very exciting, in my opinion.
We share your excitement.
Humble opinion, sir. And that is for Aberdeen Elementary School, the great thing we get to do is we get to go celebrate the construction of a new school. It's going to be an exciting place and have a groundbreaking ceremony. And while the board had previously already awarded the contract, contractor's been busy out there. It's way back off of Route 5, unlike Camp Easter School. Then when you drive by, you're going to have a hard time seeing what's going on back there right now. But by November 27th, we'll have a clear pathway to get back there to the school site. We'll hopefully have the building pad already kind of cut out, just like we did for Area 1, so you can see it. And then we'll have the ceremony out there at 10 a.m. on November 27th. and get students from both Aberdeen Primary and Aberdeen Elementary School out there, along with officials, county commissioners and the likes. And I'll be working with Catherine Murphy to get an invitation put together and sent out to everybody for that date. We've already going to be working with both schools on things the students can do to express their gratitude and present it at that day. Like I said, some things are going on out there, and that's kind of what these slides are showing through here. It's just basically clearing. A lot of undergrowth back there, scrub trees and some of the likes that came up. And so they've been out there cutting down and burning and grubbing the grounds and getting it ready so they could start pushing the dirt around. The site contractor said to us the other day he has never seen a more beautiful site because it's got the perfect amount of just gentle fall across it. So grading's going to go very quickly on this site, which is good because that means the project will move that much quicker. And so these are just early photos from a drone flyby, just taking some pictures of that clearing and cutting in the stormwater retention areas. And over time, just like the Area 1 Schools site, on our website, we'll have it set up and where we'll update with drone imagery of a video as well as photographs every month throughout the project. So right now, just ask everyone to put the 27th of November on your calendars, 10 a.m. to be out there, and it's going to be a great celebration.
That is so exciting, and thank you for the pictures too, to be able, because when we drive by, all you can see is the little cutout of the road. You can't see all the way back there. I haven't dared drive down there, so I figure it wouldn't be
Stuck and
okay.
pulled out.
So we can't use the road that's there now to get there?
We can, and
Which one is it?
just make sure you don't get stuck and you have four-wheel drive. Coming right directly across from Pit Link Lane.
Yeah.
That's where it's being cut in right there.
But where's the road without it being cut, just the regular, is there?
There is no regular road. We're cutting the road.
But some of them go way back around there, but none of that's,
Nothing.
No, sir.
There's no pavement
Okay.
or anything close to it.
okay.
we'll
It's
be
one of the
putting in the
unfortunate
pavement.
things about this one is that there's no way you can just drive by and see it.
Yeah.
It's going to be back. Eventually, we'll have company, but we're the only structure back off the road there.
Okay.
That's why
So,
we use the drone, because we wanted you all to see there's significant work being done.
Let me just see those
We
again.
we are now into we're into our second construction project now. So.
Seriously, will you just run us through your pictures again?
Sure.
They're on
Are they
the,
on there now too?
yeah, they're on the agenda.
I also would like to ask, since this is the first project that will be funded via the bond,
Yes.
if we can make sure that many of our, those that worked very hard, the volunteers that worked hard for the bond will also be invited to this
Absolutely.
Perhaps
groundbreaking.
You all can help us.
I
make
can-
sure
we can-
We include who needs to be invited.
We drove by over the weekend and we could not find it. We went back and forth a few times. Finally, we just gave up and went bowling. So, but yeah, it was
If you
hard.
went bowling, you were close.
Yeah, okay. It was hard to find.
2 weeks ago, you just needed to follow the smoke.
Yeah, I should.
And if you live down there, you know that that road that's there now wasn't there before.
Yeah.
So for those of us who drive that frequently, you see it, it's easier to see than if you don't live in that area, so.
Right.
Eventually, there'll be a big project sign on a 4-foot by 8-foot sheet of plywood painted out by the road. That'll say, announce the school and everything, so, and that little construction drive coming in.
Well, November 27th, wonderful thing to do after Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Mr.
Joe.
Barath.
I like the one that shows the elevation.
Yeah. All right, board
Madam Chair, board comments.
comments, that's what we have last. Who would like to start? Stacy, Bruce?
Bruce, you want to go?
On October 17, 18, 19, I attended a conference that was devoted quite extensively to school safety, security. There were a lot of speakers from around the country. I will say that I was very pleased to hear that a common thread was things that we've been doing for 10 years, to my knowledge, about the role of the SRO in getting to know the parents, getting to know students, that the best way to provide a safe environment is for your SROs or police or whatever you want to call them to know the students, know the parents. I was very impressed with the Richmond County Sheriff. If you ever need someone to have a presentation of another perspective, there was quite a continuum from one extreme of body cameras and vests and mass disaster drills and things that would probably scare most parent and students to the more gentle, more subtle approach that I think we emphasize. It's interesting.
Do you have any comments?
It's a great day for Moore County. We have our own Mr. Bruce Cunningham. We celebrated Thursday. It's one of the Moore County Man of the Year for the Moore County Community Foundation. It was a good time. It was comments were made. I didn't realize Bruce had done all that. We were all surprised about a lot of things. And then this weekend with the North Carolina Theater Conference with 3 of our groups being the tops. So it's been a wonderful time in Moore County for our students and faculty and administration to be able to see all the good productions. And I really appreciated the judges at the conference giving the feedback immediately to the students and directors so that they can have things to work toward. And it was very positive, though, done in a very positive manner to all students. So,
No, my comments are, things are good and I'm a happy man. That's it.
I'll just mention, although I'm preaching to the choir, that early voting is still going on. We have a 1/4 cent sales tax on the referendum. So if you haven't voted, get out and vote. I know the people who might be watching this online are school supporters, so they probably already voted too. But don't forget it.
I was just gonna just give a big kudos out to Pinecrest Orchestra on Saturday. They were out there freezing, washing cars, trying to raise some money. So it was, and they were all happy as clams, and they made a good turnout. So.
Oh, one more thing too. Speaking of raising money, vote for Coach Metzger.
Oh yes.
Vote for Coach Metzger. Money is money.
Yeah, there was a big sign of his too there.
A whole lot of money that he might possibly win, and he's currently in first place. So
Well, not him, but the
the
school
school will
athletic.
win. That's true.
Yeah,
Plus a
let's be
big
clear.
tech package. That's right.
Yeah.
Big celebration last week for him.
And this is the U.S. Cellular Coach of the Year
Yes.
award.
Correct.
Which is, if you just Google that, it'll get you to the right place.
Or
You-
it's the most valuable coach.com,
Most valuable
I think it
coach,
is.
And you can vote once a day.
Correct. Until November 13th.
And
This
you,
is one time where we say vote often and it's
That's
legal.
right.
It's preferable.
well, and I'm going to end this. I agree. You know, I have the same comments to make about our theater programs, our orchestra. I think I'm very excited to how this fall has been. Very busy, I will say. I mean, it's been a very busy time. Fall festivals on top of that, a lot of elementary schools getting into the act of bringing their communities together. And I'm just going to read one more time what the language of the sales tax is on the ballot, because I want to remind people that it is for school construction projects, that the county commissioners have made that a commitment to be able to fund, to support the funding of our school construction. So the ballot language says local sales and use tax at the rate of 1/4% in addition to all other state and local sales and use taxes. That is all it says. Just remember, end your vote on a positive note. It is a long ballot, so when you get to the end, be happy about circling 4 or filling in 4 for that. Thank you very much. That's all I got. We have, actually,
Madam Chair,
we have to go
we have
to
a
closed
very-
session.
Yes, ma'am. We have a very brief closed session, after which the staff will have 2 recommendations for personnel appointments. And we don't expect this to take very long at all.
Right. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
Madam Chair, I move that the board enter closed session to discuss confidential personnel matters pursuant to GS 143-318.11A1, A5, and A6.
Is there a
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We'll go into closed session.
May mention, we will be coming back for the one action item.
One action item.
So Mary Cat gets to stay around.
right, I call our work session and special called meeting back to order. For board action, is there a motion to,
I move we
Approve
accept
the
the
personnel
personnel
report?
report as presented.
is there a
Second.
second? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second. I got it that time.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We are adjourned.
Somebody give Kat the names of what we,
That Catherine Murphy's got it all
Got
under
it.
control.
She's got it. All right. 3 o'clock, Sonia.
3 o'clock.
Is that right, next? It's on our draft agenda. Yeah, the work
We haven't
session's at
seen the
3.
draft agenda.
Yeah, you have. It's
Actually, it's in your packet.
It's on your, it's in your packet.
it's in the packet. It's always in the packet.
Yeah, it just doesn't have the items under.
Click on your, for your
Work
agenda.
session is at 3. Work session is at 3.
Yeah. Vote.
Okay.
It's being a judge. Anyone doing that?
I'm doing
I'm doing the parade.
The debate team's gonna win though, because I'm judging.
Okay, so.
I got a bag of
where do
nerds
we
in my
meet?
car too, so can I give them to you?
What do we need?
I don't know. I'm guessing down near, right on the railroad